Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for attending CBRS Week Fall presented by FierceWireless. My name is Linda Hardesty and I'm the Editor-in-Chief at FierceWireless, and I'm going to be your host for today. Before we get started, I'd just like to thank our sponsors this morning, including Celona, Federated Wireless, Google, CBRS Alliance, and Metaswitch, a Microsoft company. This morning's session is titled The Road to Private Wireless Networks, Everything You Need to Know. Here's a quick schedule of events. We're going to kick off with a keynote from co-founder and CTO of Celona, Mehmet Yavuz, for 15 minutes. And then at 11:15 Eastern Time, we'll hear from Federated Wireless's Chief Technology Officer, Kurt Schaubach. And then at 11:30 ET, for the next 45 minutes, we'll have our main panel with speakers from Google, Crown Castle, AT&T Business, and Metaswitch. And that panel will be moderated by Principal Analyst at Mobile Experts, Kyung Moon. Time permitting, we will follow the panel with a Q&A session. So please feel free to submit any questions that you have using the Q&A tab. It's on the left side of your screen. Okay, so let's begin with Mehmet from Celona. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and thanks, Linda, for the introduction. And I'm especially honored to start the event with this opening keynote. As Linda said, I am Mehmet Yavuz. I have worked on cellular wireless for over 20 years. And most of this time I was at Qualcomm, corporate R&D, working on design and development of the 3G, 4G, and 5G technologies. And in early 2019, I joined Celona as co-founder and CTO, and it's great to be here with so many familiar names at this event. I'm looking forward to introducing you all to Celona and our recipe for success in enabling private mobile wireless networks for enterprises. So at Celona, we believe modern cloud software stack will make LTE and 5G accessible to enterprises. And we deliver a complete platform from radios to edge platform to orchestrator that delivers the quality of service levels that is needed for business critical applications for 4G and 5G in the enterprise space. By the way, when I say enterprise, I mean many enterprise verticals, including both carpeted enterprise, such as offices or universities or retail, and non-carpeted enterprise verticals, such as industrial verticals, warehouses, and retail stores. All right, so basically, we believe that the two worlds are colliding today. On one side, you have the enterprise networks, where enterprise IT teams expect full control and alignment with corporate policies and data ownership. From a solution perspective, they do expect enterprise-facing solutions that easily integrates with what they already have in place. On the other side, we have the great technology of cellular wireless as LTE and 5G. And when coupled with the CBRS spectrum, this offers a never-before-seen predictability for the enterprise wireless. We believe the local spectrum, like CBRS, is the most exciting thing that really happened in the enterprise space since Wi-Fi, probably. And this can bring the two worlds together. The predictable performance is the biggest need for a truly intent-based wireless network for business-critical applications. And Wi-Fi is great, but not enough. New cellular spectrum like CBRS is now available to enable enterprises to easily build their own private CBRS LTE 5G networks. However, today there is no seamless, simple, and cost-compelling solution that bridges these two worlds together. This is where Celona was born. And our mission is really to bring these worlds together. And to do that, you need DNA from both sides. So at Celona, we really bring together the best technical minds in the cellular and enterprise wireless to develop the first private 5G solution for enterprise. The team is a collection of industry veterans spanning experience in enterprise networking, cellular wireless, and cloud apps. We come from companies like Aruba, Cisco, Qualcomm, Amazon, Nutanix, and so forth. And we really carefully keep a balance between the enterprise cellular DNA and the cloud DNA in our company. We are essentially a Silicon Valley company with tier 1 VCs such as Lightspeed, Norwest, and Servin. And the Celona, our goal is really to make LTE and 5G accessible to enterprise IT and allow them to accelerate the adoption of the business critical applications for the mobile devices. So the availability of clean spectrum, such as CBRS, is really a key enabler. However, that's not sufficient. Our goal from technology perspective is to leverage AI and cloud native software to remove any friction in the enterprise. So we have been in this journey at Celona about 20 months now and have been talking to many people in the field during this time. So far, everything we have seen and heard further confirms our conviction to private LTE 5G with cloud native software defined networks and AI powered automation. So as I said, we've been in the field for maybe about 10 months now, and we've been seeing a great demand from mainstream enterprises, and we believe that this is where real opportunities lies when it comes to the use of CBRS spectrum. Private LTE and 5G with CBRS really opens the door to a new set of apps that optimize the way people work, in addition to improving the nature of existing critical app infrastructure. These digitization efforts span multiple verticals, and as we have learned from our interactions in market so far, here I'm showing a few examples. But without going into details of these examples, I can summarize the real-world use cases driving this initial adoption into three basic groups. First is the use cases with large range outdoor applications, enabling connectivity in logistics, higher education campuses, or parking lots, and so forth. Second one is mainly real-time applications, including voice over IP, video telephony, or even some computer vision-based applications driven by IP cameras, or even remote control applications in logistics and manufacturing. Retail or venues. Here you can see some examples of verticals with some specific examples, but in all of these cases, again, the one common thing is that critical infrastructure and apps required as part of the digital transformation initiative in these enterprises. All right, so let's talk a little bit in terms of the technical solution and the solution architecture. So from our side at Salona, we've been hard at work to bring our integrated end-to-end solution to make this as a one-stop infrastructure solution. There are three main components to the solution. Firstly, the Salona Radio Access Network is a collection of LTE 5G radios, and we provide both indoor and outdoor APs, which are plug and play, covering a variety of use cases. These 4G and 5G access points connect to Celona Edge over the local enterprise network. And Celona Edge is a complete software solution, which is essentially cloud-native service plane. It includes many functions such as EPC, 5G core, or CBRS spectrum management with domain proxy. And both Celona RAN and Celona Edge and SIM-activated devices are configured by the cloud-hosted Celona orchestrator, which is really the brains of the whole network powered by AI. Essentially, our customers can plug the APs to the local Ethernet LAN, and then they can download the Celona Edge software, and then they log into the orchestrator and activate the network and mobile devices. So we basically created an overlay network that is up and running in minutes. So how does it look in an actual enterprise? As I said, we provide a complete plug-and-play solution at the level of simplicity that enterprise IT demands. So our whole aim from the start has been simplicity and ease of deployment and integration. And we thought long and hard about each component to enable this as an overlay. And here I'm showing the fundamental components in this architecture picture. So this is really different than a traditional 4G or 5G small cell deployments, where traditional is typically completely isolated from the enterprise network. In this picture, what you see as blue blocks are the Celona solution components. And as you can see, I mean, they pretty much mirror enterprise Wi-Fi set of components in this enterprise setting. On the left, you see the Celona 4G, 5G access points connecting to the devices with the SIMs that we provide. And these are PoE enabled. They plug directly into enterprise LAN. In the middle, you see the edge that can run on any x86 hardware platform in an enterprise environment such as VM or servers. And the Celona edge is typically deployed as close to the critical business applications as possible to improve the performance metrics and reliability. And this edge integrates with the existing network services on premises within the campus or branch. And lastly, on the right, you see the Celona orchestrator, which brings a single console for management and monitoring. So this whole infrastructure can be deployed as an overlay, just similar to Wi-Fi deployments. And then in this specific example, the edge is on-prem, but alternatively, if needed, the edge can be deployed as a central node. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, after the RAN and the edge are installed, they're activated and configured by the cloud-hosted Celona orchestrator automatically. The orchestrator allows for traditional operations that enterprise IT is used to, including zero-touch provisioning, multi-tenant management, and we provide all the network management and device management tools, including the SIM provisioning for the devices. However, a real important aspect of the orchestrator is AI-powered policy automation and optimization of the network resources. So the whole operation is really centered around applications and the associated slices that we create. The orchestrator is where device groups and applications are assigned to different slices with specific SLA requirements. And then we provide the ability to configure these SLAs for each group, including the latency, packet error rate, and bandwidth. Also, we provide the ability to monitor not only the network stats, but closely monitor these KPIs for all these different slices we generate. So we automate this whole process, essentially leverage AI to achieve this goal. Offline learning enables this initial configuration in the beginning, and then we enable continuous learning over time for all the parameters across different deployments, applications, device types, and so forth. As I mentioned, the enterprise LTE 5G deployments have to integrate, right, with the enterprise applications to solve these use cases. And the same architecture should be ready to integrate with the MNO services as well. So by speaking the language of both cellular and enterprise networks, our solution focuses on enabling service level agreements, SLAs, and provides insight across different enterprise application devices and groups. So individual apps on a specific device or device groups can be assigned to guaranteed SLAs as it traverses in the cellular wireless. And individual such SLAs also translated to real-time compute memory data path enforcement within the Celona edge, protecting this data path for different traffic flows. And the orchestrator allows these individual KPI requirements to be monitored. So, for example, you can have an IP camera with a guaranteed bandwidth of 5 megabits per second, or you can have an automated guided vehicle with an end-to-end guaranteed latency of 40 milliseconds and so forth. So, to recap everything I said so far, we believe there are really three main ingredients in making CBRS the hero in private wireless mobile networks in enterprise. First, enterprise IT needs to feel comfortable with the solution of choice. So let's enable them with an easy-to-consume product architecture that can integrate with the enterprise network as an overlay, which also gives them the full control and visibility. Secondly, let's take advantage of cloud software, extending the agility of cloud apps to the enterprise campus networks and the MNO services so that these networks are rapidly deployable and scalable. And lastly, our focus is enterprise use cases and business critical applications, as I said. So enterprises need an easy way to configure their networks for these new upcoming applications, and we need to leverage AI to automate this whole process to deliver these SLAs in a manner that's easy to manage and make the whole model repeatable. So to conclude, this is my call to actions. Our trial program is active and running. If you want to see our solution architecture in action, you can visit us at salona.io. And besides this presentation for the attendees on the conference, we have also shared link to 2 additional assets as part of our profile here. First, as one example deployment, you can see the results of a deployment at UC Santa Barbara presented by Kevin Schmidt, who is their Director of Network Services at UCSB. And secondly, you can have access to our Salona Planner that's designed to simplify really the CBRS LTE wireless network capacity and coverage planning. So at this point, thanks again for having me. I'm looking forward to connecting again during the Q&A session within the next hour. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mehmet, appreciate it. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Federated Wireless's CTO, Kurt Schawbach. Go ahead and take it away, Kurt.
Great, thanks so much, Linda. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, even if we're in this virtual setting. Federated Wireless, we're the market share leader in CBRS spectrum enablement services. We've been part of the early creation of the CBRS ecosystem. And it's really exciting to be here today to speak with you about what we're doing in private wireless. My industry colleague Mehmet, who we worked with while he was at Qualcomm from the very early days of CBRS, sort of made the case around CBRS for private wireless, and he talked about some of the innovations that folks like Federated and Salona and others are doing to help make private wireless capabilities a reality. Let's call that the road to private networks on CBRS. What I intend to do in my piece here is to talk a little bit more about the destination, give you some very practical examples of things that we're doing today in CBRS that really demonstrate the power of CBRS for our private network capabilities and really drive home the key concepts around how private networking and private wireless solutions can solve really critical issues for a variety of different users and use cases. So today, there really are options available to enterprises when they think about private wireless. Of course, Wi-Fi is a very prevalent option, and so are private networks built over licensed spectrum bands. What's really unique and distinct about CBRS is that we are able to satisfy some really key needs of those users that are really unmet with things like Wi-Fi or CBRS today. And in particular, when we talk about considering CBRS for a private wireless network, we talk about 3 key concepts, sort of the 3 C's: coverage, control, and cost. Coverage, because when you're working in CBRS, you've got improved link budget capabilities over, say, Wi-Fi, because of the functions of 4G and the capabilities that 4G offers. And obviously in the future, 5G, as it rolls out in CBRS, will provide even more capability. And that capability of 4G technology combined with shared spectrum really meets the needs of enterprises when they have considerations about offering mobility services, or how do they make sure that the services provide a low latency, high bandwidth, consistent quality of service. Control really comes to notions of things like security and data sovereignty. Many enterprises really need to keep their data on premise. They need a private network solution that doesn't have to traverse the public internet in order to meet the needs that they have of these private private wireless capabilities. Looks like my slides are going all over the place here. Is that the case? Can I move my slides back, please? Sorry about that. There we go. Apologies. And then cost. Obviously, cost is a key consideration for enterprises, whether they're dealing with the investment in infrastructure or for license solutions. They have to consider the actual cost of spectrum as well. So these are other key considerations that the enterprises need to think about. So a couple very practical examples. First, the city of McAllen, Texas, and we recently announced a project that we did with the city of McAllen. They actually looked at over the summer how to address the needs of students who were going to be doing remote or distance learning. McAllen, Texas is a border city near the Mexican-U.S. border, faces some challenges. While it's a growing, thriving community, they have issues related to low-income areas where there isn't a prevalence of broadband connectivity. So the school district being very proactive and trying to say, how can we reach these students in a way to provide a uniform education experience across the city, said we're going to invest in a broadband solution for our residents and for our students. And what they did was combine the capabilities of CBRS together with Wi-Fi to offer a solution that was able to provide coverage over the entire area of McAllen, is able to meet the variety of services that they need for connecting their students, and do so in a way that is very cost effective. Students today have Chromebooks or they have other Wi-Fi enabled devices that they're going to be using as part of their distance learning. So combining the power of CBRS together with Wi-Fi and leveraging funding like CARES in order to build the network in a very cost-effective way has been able to address a really pressing need that they have in McAllen, and is going to exist and does exist in so many other municipalities across the country. Today, we're already working with other school districts since the launch of this very successful program in McAllen to provide a very similar solution for broadband to students who are doing remote and distance learning. 5G smart warehouses. And this is a really interesting project that was just awarded to us through the DoD as part of a $600 million initiative that the DoD is doing to fund new 5G innovations in support of DoD uses of 5G technology. And what they're really trying to do is look at how they can make the investments in 5G to provide secure, hardened solutions that meet the needs of our U.S. armed forces in achieving that extra layer of security, the extra performance that you can't do with things like Wi-Fi today. So this project is a project that's just now kicking off. It's with a number of partners that we're working with to bring a full 5G solution using CBRS to the Marine Corps logistics base in Albany, Georgia, where we are going to be supporting a number of new 5G IoT applications. And these are going to run the complete gamut of doing things like RFID tagging to automation of moving warehouse supplies, or supplies around the warehouse to advanced forward logistics, with the armed forces personnel who are going to be working within the warehouse itself. What's really exciting, I think, here is that this will serve as a template for all sorts of other future applications with the DoD, and creating sort of an entirely new way for the DoD to access spectrum, to own and operate private wireless networks, to meet their very important needs in defense of our country. And other smart warehouse applications. In this case, we did a a proof of concept with a large auto manufacturer in California, where they had a very large warehouse that using Wi-Fi, they just simply weren't able to meet their needs for reliable coverage and bandwidth. Barcode scanners and guided vehicles that were operated within the warehouse were unable to, reliably connect the Wi-Fi over the entire manufacturing facility. So we implemented with them a CBRS solution that could achieve that greater level of coverage, provide much better connectivity for those barcode scanners, for those automatically guided vehicles, and do it in a way that the bandwidth was very deterministic. So really great application that you can think about for warehousing, manufacturing, all sorts of other commercial, industrial applications. And in this case, coverage really being the key issue that they needed to solve, and finding a way to do that with the improved performance and capability of CBRS. And retail. With COVID, there's a number of retail locations that have had to move from, sort of in-person, in-store dining experiences to now move to quick serve, to cars and other drive-through sort of needs that we have in this sort of current state with the pandemic. And what they were able to do is use CBRS to connect outdoor digital displays that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get up in operation quickly to support this transition from in-store quick serve dining to in-car and drive-through pickup applications. And to do that, they were using CBRS to reach outside the store premise, which Wi-Fi clearly wouldn't be able to do in a very reliable way, and could offset the cost of having to pull or trench fiber, which would have been very time consuming, very costly, really wouldn't have met their needs to sort of get an alternative way of distributing food and other retail amenities out to their customers in a quick and effective fashion. So again, another great example of how the improved coverage performance of CBRS is really able to meet the needs very quickly of different enterprise applications. And then finally, in healthcare, what we have done with a major healthcare provider is to bring CBRS to healthcare facilities. And what they found there is that CBRS and a private networking capability is really a great alternative or great way to provide certain services within the enterprise setting, within the healthcare setting, within the hospital, and do so by shifting traffic off of the Wi-Fi network onto this private network to enhance security, improve performance, and thereby also improving the experience of the Wi-Fi network for those who still need to use it, like the general public who's coming in to access that Wi-Fi network as patients or visitors to the hospital facility. So in this way, we're able to leverage both the power of a private network and a public Wi-Fi network, and really by combining the two, make both of them work much better. So really, as we see the CBRS ecosystem and we see devices move from, just smartphones and external CPE and external router capabilities to now move to a greater level of embedded CBRS capability, which we will see later this year and into 2021 and beyond, we are really going to open up a lot of these new exciting IoT applications for the healthcare industry and all sorts of other exciting verticals. So much more on this to come, I think, as we continue to see CBRS grow and evolve. So as I said, Federated has really been an innovator in this space. We're excited to work on some of these very practical applications of private wireless that I've already spoke about. And what we are doing and what we have launched earlier this year in this area is providing something we call connectivity as a service. And the key aspect here is for us as a end-to-end service provider of a private wireless solution, we are abstracting all that complexity, removing it from from the end user, and providing a solution that is fully turnkey and can be deployed literally within a couple days. From initial fulfillment to on-air operations, we can quite literally have a full private wireless network in place in 2 days or less. And what we provide is all of the capabilities that are needed, from design, deployment, to actual ongoing operations, and the ability to integrate a connectivity as a service, a private wireless solution, into an enterprise IT capability through a single pane of glass to do all of the management and provide all of the visibility and analytics that are needed to own and operate the private network. It is a fully cloud-native solution, which is important for cost and reducing complexity and making it really tightly integrated into all sorts of applications that today we're doing with the AWS through their marketplace, or Microsoft Azure through their marketplace as well. And our solutions are completely integrated into those platforms. So we'd be very excited to work with anyone who's interested in our connectivity as a service offering, and to bring more of these solutions that we have already done with customers and partners in the federal space and in the commercial space today to your business as well. So thank you, Linda, and I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Next, I'd like to welcome our main panel, and we have speakers from Google, Crown Castle, AT&T Business, and Metaswitch, which is now a Microsoft company. Our moderator today is Kyung Moon from Mobile Experts, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce the panelists. So go ahead, Kyung. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Linda. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning with everyone. We have a great panelist here to discuss the roadmap to private wireless. I would like to ask each of the panelists to give us a brief introduction of yourself, your role at your companies, and why don't we go from left to right, from Dr. Preston Marshall from Google first.
Hi, I'm Press Marshall from Google. I am an engineering director, and I've been leading the CBRS standards and requirement work since back in the days of PCAST. I'm also chairman of the board of the CBRS Alliance, working to commercialize the LTE 5G technologies in CBRS.
Robert? Great.
Hi. Nice to meet everyone. Robert Boyanowski. I've got responsibility for all mobility and IoT for AT&T Business. Happy to be here. It's an exciting time for the industry, and looking forward to all the questions.
So from Metaswitch, please.
Good morning, all, and thank you, Fierce Wireless, for this event. My name is Shubh. I've been in the mobile industry for 25 years, and I'm actually very excited to work on this new era of mobile networking in the enterprise space. And one of the interesting things that we look forward to is working with a lot of ecosystem partners, many of them who are represented here. So it's definitely the next era of networking that I look forward to make it happen. Thanks again for this opportunity.
Great. Murad?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Murad Urkum, and I'm a member of the corporate development and strategy team at Crown Castle. And I'm also a co-chair of the marketing working group of the CBRS Alliance, and looking forward to an efficient and informative panel session.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. This is a great panel, and as I mentioned from the keynotes, it's an exciting time for the industry, and we have a new spectrum with CBRS and the different disaggregation trends happening. We got transition to 5G and all the different capabilities it brings to the table. So it's really an exciting time, and I want to start off with the question. Really, we had some introduction from the keynotes, but wanted to get from the panelists. What are some of the popular use cases that you see for the private cellular wireless networks, and what specific problems enterprises are trying to solve? And I want to address the question to Robert at AT&T first.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question, and it's one I get asked a lot. As Kurt was saying in his intro, I think customers have been kicking the tires around private wireless for some time, and I don't think they really knew exactly, the value that they were looking for. Serving AT&T or serving enterprise customers at AT&T, it's you get invited just about into every conversation from every Fortune 1000 type customer, but they really weren't sure what they were looking for. It does boil down into privacy, control, and security. The points were really well made that the data that they're looking to manage for whatever their business outcome really should be localized and sit on-prem and be highly secure. And with the new technology that's out there, whether that's multi-access edge compute on the cellular network or a private cellular CBRS system that we're talking about today, the enterprise can control their data. And that's the number one thing that we get asked about when talking to customers. How can we control our own environment? How do we keep our data completely safe, on-prem, localized? And it's really important to them. And then you start talking about what the use cases are. Phillips 66 is a great public example that we have at AT&T. And this was really a connected worker use case. Same thing with a winery that we went out public with, which is, managing their operation, keeping control and tabs over the volumetric data, temperature, humidity, agitation rate, in a wine vat as an example. Things that they would normally have difficulty getting to within their facilities are now kind of opened and unpacked because of the wireless technology. And the number one thing in all this, and I really like some of the positioning and value propositioning the speakers prior to me referenced. This has to be really, really easy. It has to be quick to install. I think the federated comment was a couple of days or less. Customers don't want to wait a year, right, to go manage a network like this, to build it and manage it. They want to get their hands onto it, early. So that's one of the value adds here. I think some of this new technology stacks bringing forward. The panelists here today have all kinds of experience in trying to eliminate all these pain points. So it's an exciting time to give enterprises these new capabilities, and they can solve it a number of different ways. So, but I would go back to not necessarily the use case that's driving the need. It's around data privacy, control, and security.
Great. Any other others you want to share with the audience here?
Yes, this is Shub. I can jump in. So what's interesting is the way we see the market of the use cases. It's actually not driven by the network. It's actually quite reverse. We actually think that the need to move data in real time into enterprise decision making or automation capabilities, that evolution of industrial automation or Industry 4.0 or providing better user experiences through data and AI, that actually trend started probably a few years ago as cloud compute environments became more available for complex decision-making processes, etc. And now latency matters. And what I think many of the panelists have shared here, that it's not like 4G or 5G has come up new. There have been wired technologies and wireless technologies, including Wi-Fi and several other IoT technologies that simply are not good enough for providing that data latency, the control, the security, etc. So we actually see the demand being driven by this whole transition to data-driven automation and decision-making, providing better user experiences. So we believe that the demand for the network is actually coming from the whole data and compute environments. So we actually are excited about the top three use cases we also see in line with many others is we actually did a trial with Microsoft back in November, last November, where we worked with a company out of Canada to provide automated robots for e-commerce warehouses. We definitely see military applications around the world, and we see a lot of app development around Industry 4.0 use cases. And the requirements are very simple, right? Hey, can you provide me a network that provides low latency while these companies or ecosystem builds these applications around it? So the focus we see is more on making sure the apps can be delivered, which actually what enterprises care for.
Great, excellent. Why don't we move to the question around, I mean, we have operator, we got a neutral host. I know, Murad, you're representing both CBRS Alliance and also Crown Castle. But I want to ask a questions around business model. There's a different ways to deliver private wireless capabilities and solutions. Maybe I want to address the question first to Robert, AT&T. From an operator standpoint, how do you see the business model as you engage with the different enterprises? And also, how do you engage with the different solution providers?
Right. It's a good question. I think for us, there's more than one way to skin a cat. The McAllen, Texas example is a great one of a critical need that was out there that was solved with a different solution. There's going to be different models that emerge, whether that's an OpEx heavy model or a CapEx heavy model. And depending on what the aptitude of the enterprise is, it'll maybe swing it one way or the other. For us at AT&T, we knew this was going to be a force to be reckoned with, right? CBRS/private networks was something that customers are definitely paying attention to, and there's interest there. And so, from our standpoint, we wanted to be as available as possible on any of the business models, whether that's a straight CBRS plug-and-play solution through reselling with Ericsson and Nokia, which we announced today in the press, or a hybrid managed network, which is a DAS system with edge compute, multi-access edge compute that gives the customers the control they want under license spectrum. So, we believe that there's going to be emerging models here, and we wanted to participate in all of them. And then as we look at our capital plan next year, bandwidth growth around these use cases is going to be something that we're going to be very watchful around. How much bandwidth is necessary? How much licensed and unlicensed spectrum do we put to bear to make these private systems, deliver on the bandwidth requirements that any one customer would have? So today, I think that the straight answer is, we're available for multiple different models, whether that's a straight kind of resale CapEx play or something that looks more akin to the wireless networks today, where you've got an OpEx model, and hybrid right. Somewhere in between, right? But it's definitely more software centric looking pricing versus kind of traditional cellular rating type elements, right? Once customers put these networks in, they don't expect to have any rating going on, especially within the four walls of their facility.
Great. Murad, I want to address a similar question to you. As a shared infrastructure provider, what do you see a role for a neutral host provider in setting up private wireless networks?
Thank you, Kang. CBRS is unique in the sense that not only it allows operation of a private wireless network, but it can also, the same network infrastructure can be leveraged to serve other network service providers, customers, or services in the same area. Clearly, there are different use cases, but in what in the CBRS Alliance we call public use cases, where it's not just the enterprise or the private networks owner that's accessing the area of coverage, but either it's guests or visitors or employees using it for their personal uses. There is value in being able to support them and bring the services they subscribe to where the CBRS network coverage is. And one of the main benefits of having a neutral host is to not only allow the big three tier one, we call operators, services there, but also the non-traditional operators like the cable providers who are trying to leverage new infrastructure or virtualized network operators who might choose to join this private network that's open for public use if the costs appear to be more in line with what they would be paying a traditional network infrastructure provider would provide to them. So as a result, we think the neutral host, just like in the traditional in-building coverage domain of NFL stadiums, convention centers, or other large high-capacity areas, could be playing a role in bridging the gap, not only in technology, but also in the financial aspects of it, and help with the managed service feature of a wireless network, independent of whether it's CBRS or not, and clearly it applies to CBRS as well.
Great. I want to address to Preston from Google. Do you see like enterprise direct models in your specific industries or types of use cases where you see an enterprise taking more active approach, more direct hands-on approach?
So I think what we see is that, in the past, people had two choices, monthly SIM card from a carrier or Wi-Fi. Two choices, pretty simple. And we saw people very, very active in both of those. No reason to believe that changes. With CBRS, we've opened up almost a continuum of options between a CapEx, an OpEx model, somewhere in between. A neutral host one has cost sharing in some way. And so, it's not surprising that industry hasn't really converged on what are the 3 or 4 sort of popular submodels there. And I think that's part of the excitement for CBRS, that we see some companies going down the path of looking for very standalone, very activist private deployers. In other cases, it's people wanting much more of a turnkey solution, the OpEx-oriented one that AT&T just mentioned. So I think what's fascinating is to watch this process converge. So I don't think we should be looking to say we know the answer now, or we should be unhappy because the community hasn't found one. When we started this whole CBRS thing back in, I think, 2013, we called it the innovation band. And it wasn't just innovation about torturing frequencies, time, and phase. It was about innovation in the business models. Neutral host certainly was really appealing back then. Private LTE was almost unimaginable to us at the time. So I think what we're seeing is that all of those models are going to flourish for a little while, and the community is going to kind of converge on the ones that work well for all of the parties. CBRS Alliance is obviously a venue for people to talk about it, but I think most of the interesting projects I know no one's talking about yet, and they're all happening behind the door. So what we're going through is a search for finding out which models work between the suppliers, the operators, the private equity. I think the other panelists are right. I think on-premises protection of data. I'd like to see more people contribute to CBRS Alliance to our local breakout, where we're looking at those features. AT&T, you guys can help a lot there. But there's very clearly some unique features here, but the world's still learning how to use it. And we shouldn't accelerate that process too fast, because it's good to see these options explored.
Well, it's only as, we heard a call to action here, but also, it's part of the CBRS. The beauty of it is, you could make it a more disaggregated bite-sized chunks where enterprises can participate. I want to hear from Sub. Are you, as a 5G core provider and solution provider, how do you see like system integrators engaging in this area of the market?
Yeah, so we recognize our position in the market as just one piece of the technology, right? We have the 5G core. Obviously, as we integrate into Microsoft, we will have other pieces of the technology. But one of the commonalities we have between at least Metaswitch and Microsoft is we do rely and enable system integrators and managed service providers to provide the end-to-end solution. And that's exactly what we are hearing from enterprises, right? Whether it's a CapEx business model or an OpEx business model, or I actually agree with with other panelists that there'll be a hybrid business model. I think they all will coexist. I actually don't agree that if the whole industry will converge into one single use case. The enterprise, if you look at the enterprise market, 10, 20, 30 years, it's a highly fragmented market. So we believe that all these models will coexist. In the end, the enterprises will determine what business model and what level of simplicity they want. Right now, what we are seeing in the market is they want the simplicity of, hey, I need one party who can deliver the entire solution and run this network. So initially, at least for the next year or two, or immediately, what we are seeing is a larger demand for standalone networks on premise with full control of data and devices and all the information behind that. And I think we are seeing a hybrid model that our customers or our channels, MSPs and SIs, are providing. So there's a deployment cost, which Federated called it day zero, all the way to subscription-based product and support costs that's day one, day two operations. So we see that hybrid model kind of working well for the enterprises who are seeking simplicity at this time. But we do believe that other models will exist and enterprises will have a good choice in the market.
Great. Well, I want to jump to maybe switch to a topic of, really execution. Right? How do we actually set up a private wireless network? And the first question is from an enterprise perspective. Many of the enterprise segment has been very familiar with the Wi-Fi ecosystem. There is a very existing, strong ecosystem of both system integrators as well as solutions. So from a CBRS and private cellular networking, what major elements are needed to set up a private wireless? And I want to address this question to Preston, if I could.
So yeah, I think the first thing, the most important thing, frankly, is not equipment or even software. It's that an enterprise entering into CBRS has to work in a different culture. And in large part, our community has had a wireless culture, operator-focused wireless culture, and kind of an IT-focused Wi-Fi belonging to the IT side, LTE, and 5G belonging to cellular. So I think the number one thing is that people have to get comfortable that they're going to be working in two different types of technology. We haven't yet built that bridge that makes CBRS look like IT. It looks like a system that was spawned in the telco world. We brought things into it like certificate authorities and really HTTPS type authentication, but by and large, it's got that stuff. So I think that's the most important thing. They have to recognize that they're opening a system that doesn't just plug in to an IT framework. They're going to have unique skills. Then, of course, we get the checklist. They have to have a core. Just the work by the carriers in disaggregation has given them a real advantage here because there are a lot of options that didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago. The RAN, a lot of guys selling radios, again, with O-RAN and all, that's becoming a more open market. So the marketplace for 3GPP-based technologies now looks a lot more like the IT marketplace where you can mix and match stuff. So I think they're going to be comfortable with that. The good news is we haven't talked about SaaSes at all. For 3 or 4 years, everyone talked about SaaSes and CBRS because the SaaS guys with the drivers. But everyone's sort of seen it was a non-story. It's a dog that didn't bark. The SaaSes haven't crashed any Navy airplanes. People have, once they've gotten used to it and have gotten up. So I think a lot of the concern about this band, about the unique control structure, wasn't LTE hard enough without you guys adding this? I think that's gone away. So I think people now realize the SaaS is just another RJ45 in the wall. And now I think it's really up to the vendors to sort of scatter the cost points. We don't sell, unlike most of the people here, we don't sell anything other than SaaS services. And so, seeing the vendors creating this rich set of disaggregated options for people, for integrators, to come in and not bring the heavy manual load we associate with LTE is kind of the challenge. It can't have 15 tier one supplier guys operating for inside of an enterprise where we have half a guy doing Wi-Fi today.
Great. I want to maybe address it. Is that, I mean, it could be depending on different use case and industries and types of stakeholders, but I want to ask, is there like an optimal architecture one can consider? And I want to address this to Sue, because I mean, you're working with, as a core provider, you probably have a visibility of the different types of solutions that's out there. You know, how does edge computing come into this play to maybe simplify the architecture of it?
So I think Preston mentioned one thing that I definitely agree and I want to elaborate on, is that irrespective of the technology, whether it's the core or the compute, even MEC, there's clearly two different stacks. That's what we like to call it, right? There's two different stacks that are evolving. One is obviously the carrier stack, right, which is basically telco architectures being extended into cloud compute, including edge compute environments, right, to provide better performance, extend carrier services to the edges, including enterprises, including CBRS. But there's a parallel stack that is evolving, which Preston called the IT stack, that we are definitely focusing on building with the same building blocks, right? So it's 5G core on both sides, but there is a optimized stack for enterprises that is much easier to consume and also enables enterprises to have better control, visibility of data and backend systems, right? So instead of like I think Robert mentioned, instead of connecting it to a rating engine, what enterprises want to see that all the device provisioning on the CBRS network is connected to their backend asset management and asset tracking workflows in the enterprise, because they'll have hundreds of devices or thousands of devices, and they need to manage that, right? Everything from software upgrade, which has got nothing to do with the network, right? Software upgrade, how do you procure it? When do you update it? So there's a whole need for integrating these network capabilities into more enterprise workflows. So we definitely see an enterprise optimized or enterprise stack evolving, which will have the same components, but look very different from the carrier stack, right? It will have the same compute, it will have a 5G core, it will have a radio access network, it will have a backend system, but integrated into enterprise workflows. Will look very different, right? For example, transport will not be carried over open transport networks. They will be carried over SD-WAN technologies, right? So how do you integrate the network, the radio network and core into the enterprise application network through SD-WAN? So those are the types of optimizations we are looking at from an architecture perspective.
Great. You know, one of the questions that was been asked, I think it's maybe somewhat clarified, but you know, there is obviously POW auction happened, and I think it's been pretty successful from our perspective. It raised a lot of money. And as you think about the spectrum used for whether you need a POW, priority access licenses, or using a general authorized access, do you think that's POW licenses that are needed for a lot of this private wireless? I want to maybe address to Robert from AT&T, and others could please chime in as well.
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, spectrum is, it's one of those resources that it depends on what the business outcome and bandwidth requirements are, and I think there'll be certainly a place for PAL and GAA. From our vantage point, we are here at a little different perspective. So we've got low band, mid band, and some premium millimeter wave spectrum. So we come at it a little bit differently, and it starts with the business outcome and the bandwidth required to what they're trying to do. That's probably Preston. Made some comments about culture. I think one of the things that we got to do right here, and it's all of us, is to help enterprises make informed decisions around the ROI models, the financial models, and the business outcomes that they're trying to drive, right? So there's a lot of excitement around the technology and the enablement and what's here and what we've been able to build as an industry. But if we lose focus on what the customer is trying to do to run their operation, make it better, we're going to miss the mark. It'll be tech for tech's sake and not really driving, the businesses forward. So we are spending some time here trying to get that right within our go-to-market planning cycles at AT&T Business to help our sales teams and our customers and our professional services folks, to help customers think through the journey. Why do I need a private system? What are the tangible outcomes that I can sell to my management team internally to go buy one of these things and put it in and operate it? Making those decisions around, do I operate it or do I outsource to managed service? Have all those things together. So full circle, coming back to your question, it's spectrum is just one of many elements, and we look at it across the entire continuum, right? Low band, mid band, licensed, unlicensed, all the way up to millimeter wave.
Great.
I'd like to jump in here. When we set the whole idea of PCAST and CBRS up, pretty much everybody hated it. The traditionally unlicensed people were ticked that it wasn't all unlicensed. AT&T, CTIA all criticized it wasn't all completely licensed. And so almost no one was standing there except for poor Google. I think what we see is that the world's understood that having the same technology and the same use cases in the same band with different licensing options actually works well for everybody. And so if you're thinking about this PAL, non-PAL problem, you have to, I think, in addition to use case and all the engineering, you have to go look at where are you operating? We put a lot of work into converting to fusing our CBRS tools with Google Earth. So if you're here, we know that you are a block away from someone else using it. Now, the model the government makes us use is approximately 360 million years old. It doesn't even recognize trees, much less buildings. But when you put trees and buildings in, trees are really murder at this band. You can take a look and understand that if you are a block away from someone, you are in your own world. And you shouldn't be afraid to use GAA. If you are out in the middle of the Mojave Desert and there's a guy 100 meters away using something, then you're going to have issues. But then you should ask why you're in the Mojave. And so bringing to bear here the geospatial data. This band is a very local micro neighborhood band. And so you want to go talk to a SaaS that has the kind of tools they know where everybody is, but then equate that to what's that environment look like. And I think for enterprise, particularly indoors, they're going to find that they could care less about GAA. Neutral host outdoors is going to be a little more nuanced decision. But again, these buildings that surround us are shield rooms to CBRS. And so we can get somewhere on the order, by our numbers, around 100 times more density than you would get with the same kind of deployment down in the low band spectrum that we use for coverage networks. So it's really a local decision, and don't make it until you've sat and calculated the kind of windows around you and all that other kind of gory stuff.
Preston, I just want to clarify. Did you say the indoor deployments don't care about GAA, or did you mean?
It don't care is an absolute. One should never use absolute spectrum, but you should take a good look at if you've got e-glass in your windows. Then you're probably going to get 30 dB isolation. If your access points are fairly dense and there's someone across the street, he's losing 30 dB going out. So you've got 60 dB of shielding plus range. Range is almost immaterial in this band. It's all about what's in the path. Whether people are close or not. The Navy says we interfere with people 50 kilometers off Norfolk from DC. Yeah, in a flat Earth, but we actually know this doesn't go 2 blocks in Arlington because we've done the measurements. So it's about where you are. You shouldn't be afraid of GAA if you're in one of these crowded urban areas because you're going to get shielding whether you want it or not. The outside guys don't like it, but the inside guys can really benefit from it.
Great. Murad, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things to consider, and also Robert mentioned this as well. I mean, it's a journey, so you have to look at from a business case and also a technical case. From a CBRS Alliance perspective, with the ongoing solutions, are there any resources that the enterprises or others, as they look into leveraging the CBRS band and or other bands for private wireless, are there resources out there they can guide them to?
Absolutely. CBRS Alliance is put together by the visionaries, which one of them is sitting among us in this panel, for exactly that purpose. It's not there to lobby for the shared spectrum initiatives. It's not just there for the technical details, but it's also there to be able to explore the different business use cases and mechanisms to be able to help not only its members but also the community and the CBRS ecosystem. We do have a deployment and operations work group that has put together an excellent document, which is a private LTE deployment guide. For those of you who are interested, you can reach out to any one of us or to any CBRS Alliance members. If you are a member, you can download it from the CBRS Alliance website. I believe pretty soon there's going to be it's going to be part of the public website as well, along with a blog. But we have that out. Another deployment guide that our deployment and operations work group is working on is the neutral host deployment guide, which will soon be available. And there are many other tools that the CBRS Alliance is putting it out there. So in a shameless pitch, I will also make our director of memberships happy by saying that please feel free to explore different options to join the Alliance. There are many, many different ways. It's not expensive. Feel free to check the Alliance out.
Well, certainly that's great information. And certainly it's going to be an ecosystem play to bring the CBRS use to bear as we look at the deployment in the private wireless. One last topic I wanted to address quickly. I know we've got a great set of questions, so I want to make sure we have time to address some of those. Last topic is around devices. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions, and we have new smartphones being introduced as we make the transition to 5G. I want to ask the panelists, and generally speaking, what devices do we have right now that can support CBRS band? And also, what do you think devices we need down the road in the pipeline to enable the broad array of private wireless use cases? Maybe I want to ask to Robert, and then maybe go from Robert to Preston and also Sub as well.
Yeah, I'm just excited that we have an iPhone with 5G in it this year. So it's been a long time coming, and the devices, are usually the last thing to trail here, right? So getting the endpoints equipped with the right technology to actually work off these spectrum bands is really, really important. So that usually start with the gateway, and then for backhaul behind it, namely Wi-Fi forward haul, front haul. So I'm anxious to hear kind of what the panelists have to say about the ecosystem personally, because it's one of those things that we definitely need to spur the investment and the innovation to get the most out of all these IoT type use cases that are out there.
Murat, can you comment on that? Sorry, go ahead.
I couldn't disagree with what he said. I think I would add that Pixel's first phone to have it from Google. But look, we have one of almost everything now out there. CBRS Alliance polls every week, everything from the FCC. We're hundreds of between CBSDs and user equipment. We have at least one of everything for the different use cases. Now what we have to focus on is having depth and competitive offerings and features coming in to move beyond the one of everything. SaaSes, I think we have 5 or 6. We have a number of companies putting core in for the services, both physical and virtual. So we've accomplished the goal of building out an ecosystem that lets people build the CBRS network they want. The next step is getting a lot of depth in that and getting a lot of cost competition. We have traditional Wi-Fi company, enterprise Wi-Fi, as well as LTE. We really think the Wi-Fi companies create competitive pressure on cost because they sell into a different market. I think everyone benefits from that. So I think we've answered the question, will there be devices and can you build what you want? We're now in the phase of really fleshing that out and giving people more choice in vendor, and thusly in vendor support relationships and the OPEX, CAPEX relationships going downstream. But no one needs to be worried about will it happen, because that explosion of devices has happened.
Great. We got about 5 minutes left. So I want to bring back Mehmet Yavuz from Salona, who gave us a great keynote, to the Q&A session here. And let's go through we have tons of questions, though. I want to address one of the questions around what are the remaining obstacles for the neutral host connectivity for CBRS and integration to carrier network? Maybe you could address to Robert at AT&T if you comment on that. Or others who have a comment in terms of how do we get the neutral host connectivity enabled for private wireless or other types of use cases? Anyone want to comment on that?
I can take that.
Alliance, one of the highest priorities is to work that relationship, but it's got to be between the players. And okay. I guess we sort of view handset penetration is a lagging, and as handset gets up, there'll be more pressure to build those relationships. Certainly, everyone understands it and everyone's working on it. It just, there isn't here's the standard form to fill out. We're certainly not there, and it's all occurring behind doors. But it's not a problem that's being ignored. It's just until we get to 50, 70% handset, it's also not a pressing issue that people are saying, my God, there are people who aren't being served. Well, they don't have band 48 yet. Within a year, they will. And so that's a deployment operations working group we have. And I think in the business working group, it was the number one item our members wanted us to work on.
Great. Another question is regarding, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, to add on to what Preston said, I would even say there are so many options for connectivity, from as simple brute force, pure roaming to fully integrated, that as he pointed out, with all the ecosystem devices that are available. And by the way, the list of all CBRS compliant devices, or the publicly known CBRS compliant devices, is on the CBRS Alliance webpage, open to all members and non-members. You can always get it there. There are plenty of options, from the major manufacturers of handsets to IoT devices, routers, and the whole gamut. But from a neutral host connectivity, again, the spectrum is new. The PAL licenses have just been auctioned. People have started deploying them. We're all getting our new shiny handsets that have the spectrum support. So it's just a matter of time when everything falls in its place.
Great. So one of the questions was regarding the smart cities. Is the CBRS ecosystem working with smart cities to provide an option for private wireless broadband implementation? Mehmet, I don't know if you guys are engaged in any of those type of projects. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, yes, Haikun, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of interest in smart cities, and I will expand that to also K-12 and remote learning initiatives. With this latest COVID situation, we see a huge surge of those use cases to provide wireless broadband internet service to certain population areas, and also students for their remote learning. And CBRS is a really good option for that purpose, especially if you can leverage existing infrastructure, right, without building big towers and new sites. If you can use, existing buildings and maybe rooftop installations for the CBRS Category B base stations, and that's happening all over the country.
Okay. I want to take one more question. Says, how do you ensure the private network spectrum, CBRS, will not interfere with mobile operators' Band 48 use?
Well, you don't.
Sorry?
If it's PAL, it's protected by rule. If it's in GAA, it's come as you are. That's why people buy PALs. If
Yep.
it's a
Okay.
PAL, we have gone through massive certification testing. Kurt's not on the call, but we went through misery for 6 months collectively to prove we protect the PALs from all of GAA. So if you bought a PAL, you will be safely protected. If you're in GAA, you are taking the chances. So it's an offload network.
Okay. Well, one last question, if we could. This question comes is regarding what are the customers' expectations for failover as more of their enterprise operations become dependent on the private network? Anyone want to?
So I can, yeah, I can comment on that. So we we definitely are looking to address those questions in different layers, right? So when we talk about, I think the need is there clearly as enterprise workflows and automation become critical part of the productivity and outputs that these businesses generate, whether it's in the industry or a military application or even schools and broadband. So it's absolutely a critical requirement, and that's what URLLC is all about, right? Ultra reliable, low latency communications. The way we think the industry and ourselves addressing this is in multiple tiers, right? So how do I make sure that if you have basically a power outage at an industry or a site, how does the network come back online? So providing that level of backup and reliability. What if there is a cloud cut, right? So if you're looking at a cloud-based systems or centralized systems or net carrier systems, right? What if there is a cloud cut, right? How do you recover that, or can you sustain, or can the network survive? And there's obviously local redundancy and capabilities, including geo redundancy. So there's layers of reliability that is going to be built into the system. Many of the technologies are already available today, but as you see these standalone networks being deployed in isolated modes, or even remote locations, or even basically a localized application, right? You could have the best of cloud connectivity and power, but just the performance needs are so highly reliable. So there's going to be layers of availability, survivability, data backup. All these things are going to be built into the system, and that's the job of the technology providers on this panel, is to solve that problem for the enterprises, right? In the end, they care about reliability. We need to address that together.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for the great panel. I really appreciate your participation and the great questions that we have had. I want to turn it back to Linda for the final words. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kyun. Well, that was really an excellent panel, and I think you guys gave us a lot of new things to think about. I want to thank all of the panelists for this great conversation, and thank you to everybody for attending this morning's session of CBRS Week Fall, presented by FierceWireless. Please join us back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for our Private Wireless in the Verticals, Part 1, where we're going to be looking at use cases in education, commercial real estate, and public spaces. And on behalf of Fierce Wireless, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for participating, as well as this morning's sponsors, Salona, Federated Wireless, Google, CBRS Alliance, and Metaswitch, a Microsoft company. Have a great day. Thank you.